I am just so excited to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Ken Druck. He is my brother, he's my friend. We go so far back. And what came to mind to me, how far back we go, is that we were friends, and then we were in Solana Beach, and we each had an office in this office building. And I go running down the hall to visit, see how he set up his office. And I look down, it's like, wow, you have a fax machine. Not only you have a fax machine, but nowadays people put it on their business card. And I always remember that moment. I can put myself right there. Like we go way back. Ken is a psychologist, he's a speaker, an author, and he is known, I don't know how many of you know that, but he is known as the nation's grief counselor. He's the one that was called into 9/11, Columbine, Sandy Hook, Katrina. And his heart is so big. It is just surrounds you with just love. And in the early days, this is really early, Joe and I were there and we were having some staff challenges and there was some upset and judgment and all that. And I remember so long ago, it's like you need help, you need a challenge, I'm right there. He would just, sometimes on his motorcycle, come zooming up, and he would just sit there and be with us. And you just spent the entire day talking with our staff and you created the love and the shift. So I've always felt like you were there on my shoulder. You were always there with me. I just feel such love for you that of who you are as a person. You just exude it. And Ken has gone through a lot in his life, and he shared it with the world because of it. He has 2 daughters, an earth daughter and an angel daughter. Both of them have been to super camp and exchanged a lot. One of them is Steffi. Steffi, would you stand up? Steffi is Ken's daughter. You've been to super camp twice. Steffi is just amazing and doing wonderful work out there and there with her husband. And is that Kevin, your name? Eric. Lynette's son. So being there together, it's special to have you here with us. And Ken's other daughter is Jenna. And many of you know the story of that she was quite the student leader and out there in the world and presenting and had so much to give the world, went on a semester at sea. During the semester at sea, there was an accident and she was killed with others that were. And one thing Ken did while she was at sea was record her messages home and was going to surprise her with all these because she would call and say what she learned. So in my lifetime, one of the moments was at her service. It was outdoors, so beautiful. And Ken, you standing up and speaking, and I will never, ever forget those moments. And then you played some of her recordings, and we were learning for Jenna there. And to be at her own service and learning from her. But and then in the days after, I came to see you in the afternoon just to sit with you. And what I remember you saying, this is too hard. This is too hard. We have to do something. I have to do something. I have to do something. It's just so hard. And what you did then was create the Jenna Druck Foundation to help other families. So it's families helping families. So you did something and you stepped up. And you've given so many workshops. And Steffi, I know you presented with your dad and followed the work as well and presented out in the world. And it's just such a beautiful, beautiful thing. So that's the love part of what he's done, and he brings love everywhere. But he has he's an expert out there in the world. He's an expert. CNN calls on him. In fact, they called on him on the day he was coming here, and he said, I can't be on CNN. I'm coming to TLC for this trip. So he's a regular on a lot of shows. So he's been on Larry King and Oprah, you name it. He does national conferences, speakers. He's a recipient of the Distinguished Contribution of Psychology, Visionary Leadership. His books include The Secrets Men Keep, How to Talk to Your Kids, Healing Your Life After the Loss of a Loved One, and his newest, Courageous Aging, we're going to hear about. And with all he's done in the world and all he's created, he's kind of in a place of transition, creating newly for us. So I'm just so looking forward to hearing from you, and thank you for sharing.
Come here, Bobby. I love you. Thank you. Thank you. The people who show up in our lives. It's amazing to be standing in front of an audience. Yes, do it. I'm cherishing this. An audience, many of you were there and have been there. And even if you weren't there in the original moments, you have been there since. So to be standing before you and have this opportunity for us to do a sharing on the tail end of what's been an extraordinary week is truly an honor for me. We walked in and Bobby said, turn to the person next to you and say, I'm so glad you're here. Well, as you get a little older, you look in the mirror and you say, I'm so glad I'm here. And we always think it's somebody else. We look across, and as a friend of mine did recently, he looked across at his wife and he said, Ken, I don't know how to talk to my wife about it. I think she's getting hard of hearing. One of the issues of aging is our hearing starts going, and I don't know how to approach her. So we talked about strategies. He went home and he tried the every 5 feet mode, which is you stand back 15 feet and you go, honey, what's for dinner? And you walk in if you don't get a response, and it's like, sweetheart, what's for dinner? And then if she still doesn't respond, you go in and you're right over her shoulder and you say, honey, what's for dinner tonight? And he did that. And on that third try, honey, what's for dinner tonight? She turned around and said, for the third time, chicken. So we always think it's somebody else, right? Then I walked in, and we have a number of younger people here who think this aging, courageous aging, is about when you feel like you're aging. I mean, how many people in here feel like you're aging? All right? Some of you don't. You're bulletproof. You are in the prime season of, you're not aging. You're not getting older. You're not looking at numbers or feel. So there was a younger person here in the beginning of the week, and I was telling them a story about another young friend of mine. And this is a little risky here. We got risky last night, thanks to our friend out back in the day. So, I was saying, when you get to be 40, 45 years old as a guy, you start going through prostate exams. It's something you may not have experienced, but you're going to, and it's something you go into the doctor, and the doctor lubricates his fingers, and he checks your prostate, and it's a little unusual. And so he was telling me the story of going in and doing that, and he said, the first thing that disarmed me was the doctor put 2 fingers in my rectum, and I said, why do you need to do that? He says, well, I'm looking for a second opinion. So that was the first thing. So the second thing he said was that the doctor looked over at him, and he says, look, I don't want you to get alarmed. I know you're a young man in your 40s, and I don't want you to get alarmed, but sometimes there's an erection. And he said, okay, and he got the exam, and he looks back at the doc, and he says, Doc, there's no erection. And the doctor looked back and said, I wasn't talking about you. So I figure we're at the tail end of an incredible week, all right? So let's hear it for us, right? Courageous aging. Let's go on a little journey very quickly. I'm going to go through some things quickly. First of all, every season of my life, and Bobby started describing, has been I call it TAO, transforming adversity into opportunity. Every one of us can think about the seasons and the changes and the transitions we've gone through in terms of that we had to transform some kind of an adversity. We're going to talk about aging as an adversity today. Each season of life presents us with these challenges that are also incredible opportunities to grow our souls. My awakenings, we talked in the beginning of the week, we had some extraordinary things. And by the way, we're going to talk, so I'm taking off my shoes. Where's Dave? Where's Dave? The shoes go off, Let's get... Kimmy's here with us today, right? So let's talk about this. Every season, we're challenged to observe, to look, to take inventory, to reflect, to process. I look to get upgrades in my processor. We all have these processors. Things happen, and we put it into that processor. And how do we come out? How deeply do we look? How courageously do we live? Then we have an opportunity to reimagine. Hopefully, we're reimagining our best possible future. Then that's what you're going to be invited to do, because we're going to do some exercises in a minute. And then we're invited to live forward courageously into what we've realized, into that reawakening. Yes? Okay. So, this is me at 16. And I'm not going to tell the story. I'm going to fast forward through the kid with learning disabilities, growing up post-Holocaust, hearing the stories of relatives who died in concentration camps, redefining what it meant to be a man. John and I were doing that at around the same time. What the hell does it mean? Basic training as a man is not working in any way, shape, or form. What do we do? So on top of the world, when I was 47 years old, having been on Oprah at 35 and having been on top of the world, giving programs for YPO all over the world and gallivanting around, my oldest daughter says, "Dad, I'm going to go on the trip of a lifetime." It was her junior year. And you heard a little bit about Jenna. Jenna was elected one of America's future leaders, one of 10 kids out of high school. She was a remarkable person. Her sister will tell you all about Jenna. And Jenna says, "I'm going on the trip of a lifetime." And I said, "Sweetheart, this is going to be a platform for the rest of your life. You're going to go on semester at sea. You're going to come back. You're going to see what the world is really like. What's happening in the world?" She knew that Colorado and San Diego were not the world. And so she embraced that. So here I am, rising out of the ashes suddenly. My oldest daughter dies in an accident. Every cell in my being is turned inside out. I'm obliterated. Thank God for people like Raz, because I called Raz at a friend's suggestion, and I said, "Raz, I need to go into retreat. I'm dying. A part of me has died." And I said, "Will you stand with me? This is not about getting clear with my parents. It's not about some of the things you normally do in the Hoffman process. Will you walk with me? Every step. I'm dying. Something needs to happen." And Raz did. And that's how Raz and I became brothers. So for me, all of that, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that later, but rising out of those ashes, starting the Ken Druck Center, having 20 years of my life in service, suddenly it was time. My earth daughter, Steffi, and my angel daughter, Jenna, and my fiance, Lisette, said, "It's time for you to get a life. Have you noticed you turned 65 years old? Maybe, working 70-hour work days, being the grief guru and being on call to families all over the world. Maybe that season has passed. Maybe the honoring has been done." And so, winding down 20 years of service, the honoring had been done, and I entered the now what phase, which we all go through. And here's a Jenna picture and a Steffi picture. Jenna's on the left, as you know. And it was the now time. So what's a 65-year-old man to do? The big now what? Okay? And we don't have to be 65 to be at now what. Now what happens all along the way. I had attained notoriety. Was I going to be complacent? I had honored my daughter's life and spirit. My earth daughter had found the man of her dreams. Tony, raise your hand. Tony fell out of heaven. We love him. I had found Lisette. I was, for the first time in my life, tired. And some of you have experienced this. I had never experienced what it's like to be tired of life. I have this reverence for living. I have bottomless energy. I'm tired, feeling tired, like, hey, maybe it's time to begin the wind down, the great wind down, to drop down into a spiritual place. Maybe I'm disengaging from the world. Plus, people are calling me sir, and the world is changing. Yeah. Would I kick back, rest on laurels? I'd had a blessed life. Could I wind down? What was I going to do? Well, the decision, again, transforming adversity into opportunity. I could allow myself, was I willing to go back into the soup? This is the place, and I'm sure we've all hit some patch of unknowingness, some moment of emptiness, some moment of fear and dread. Even this week, we touch these places. And do we summon the courage to drop down into these places to do the work? We live in a world where there's a pill for every pain, a diversion for every moment of emptiness, a fix for every problem. But that's not the way it really is. Sometimes we are asked to stand in a moment of utter terror, of fear, of emptiness and unknowingness, and feel that organic faith that comes up from inside of us that says, live forward, live on. There is more to do. Your life is still unfolding, even with the invitation to wind down. And I deliberated with my family, my men's group. My men's group, we joked. We got together, talking about business 25 years ago and our, the women in our lives and all this stuff and living forward and new chapters. And suddenly we were helping each other learn how to die. We lost Pat, who was 99 years old, our elder. And we lost my dear friend Terry just 2.5 years ago. And suddenly our conversations are, even though there's a great age range, suddenly we're all talking about the issue of what does it mean to find peace with the whole big enchilada? What does that mean? And if I find it now, whether I'm 25 or 75, if I find it now, how will that affect the quality of the rest of my time here and my relationships? So rather than lapsing into despair, getting older, not grieving my younger self, because I had to grieve my younger self. Hey, you want to hear some stories about me when I was young? You want to hear what I did? And how, want to look at some pictures? Grieving our younger selves as men and women is an important process. That's part of grief literacy. And if we don't process that, if we don't talk about it, if we don't cry out about it, if we don't joke about it, if we don't process it, guess what happens to it? We all know that. So could I summon the courage to reimagine my best possible future and move forward? So, I decided, hey, there's a guy who knows a lot about this stuff. Ken Druck, he has this system called the 5 honorings. It's what you do after a season of loss. So the first honoring is your own survival, right? And by the way, a lot of this stuff is on kendruck.com. And I'll send it to you as well, so don't worry about copying it. The first honoring is our own survival. It's self-care. It's self-care, not 101 or 202. It's the advanced course in self-care. Knowing all of the self-care saboteurs, all of them, and being aware of where I get sucked in, where I get pulled in, where I say yes when I needed to say no. So our own survival, surviving the dark night that we might be going through. And it might not be what's happened. It might be what's not happened. It might be what hasn't happened, which is also often the more elusive loss that we experience. The second tenet of the 5 honorings is embodying some aspect of their spirit. My daughter's spirit, her incredible love of life and enthusiasm. How could I be more like her and her sister when I grow up? What of their essence would I embody? So I started embodying it. The third thing, cultivating a spiritual relationship, looking at the enormity. We all ask, am I the spiritual being having a human experience or the human being having a spiritual experience? Starting to cultivate the spiritual in me, my relationship with the greater, with the great beyond and beyond that, with the enormity of what this is, flying through space on a speck of sand. And by the way, let's acknowledge, I don't know how you guys arranged to have this painted on the back wall and have it moving while we were all speaking, but congratulations, you guys are amazing. Doing good in her name. One of the most liberating aspects of courageous aging is paying the gratitude that we have for the blessings of what we've been given, the privilege we've been given, the opportunities we've been given, paying them forward so that somebody else, a child of mine and her husband, Lisette's son Eric, all those who survived me, my grandchildren, future generations can sit in the shade of a giving tree that I planted. So doing something good in her name was part, and I decided I can do something good. I'm in the middle, I'm in the soup here. I'm aging, and if I summon the courage, maybe there'll be something I will have to say. And finally, the thing that involves the greatest amount of courage. And courage, by the way, whether it's Socrates or you're talking about Maya Angelou, courage, they would both say, was the greatest virtue. Embedded in every noble virtue is the element of courage and our capacity to summon courage. Think about the courage that we've all had to summon. Sandy, listening to you, walking out onto a stage every night. My God, where did you find the courage? Kimmy, how do you dive 100 feet underwater? All right? How do all of us, Carl, how do you walk out with the sense of knowing and seeing and do what you do and capture the brilliance? And all of us, I go around the whole room here. All of us have summoned an amazing amount of courage to do what we do. You getting up and creating open space, which was brilliant and revitalizing in every possible way. You getting up last night and opening up after a hard week and cracking the heart of this group open last night with your music, with your humor, with your grace. So all of us, and Jack, continuing to hold a space in this space the way you do. And whatever that costs you, whatever blessings it gives you, but whatever courage that involves for you to keep showing up the way you do in a visionary leadership role in this space. So all of us, writing new chapters of life, reimagining my best possible future for me was closing the Ken Druck Center and starting a new chapter of life. Yeah. Rendering it inactive. It was a new awakening, starting to write about the resilience, distilling the essence of what I had learned, walking into the first town hall meeting after 9/11 and staring into the eyes of 1,000 people who just watched somebody they love be incinerated. Or Lisette and I going to Sandy Hook, being called in to help the families who had just watched their children be murdered. What did we learn and know about resilience? And that ended up in the Real Rules of Life book and in a lot of the work. Transforming adversity at the deepest level. What compassion do we learn if we've had a trip to the bottom of pain? How does that afford us a level of compassion that very few people are able to attain? So, deciding that I can make a difference in a culture, because as I looked at it, as all of us think about how we drop down into what we know, where we've developed mastery, where we're holding an inquiry out of in a cellular level in our life, what our life is calling us to know and to know better and to understand. That's what was happening to me about the experience of getting older. Looking at my older self in the mirror or watching myself, older self on a TV show and going, who is that guy? He doesn't look anything like the older guy, the younger guy, the younger version of me, but learning how much resistance I had to embrace the older version of me. There are some affirmations I want to read you. And of course, we all know that $1 trillion is spent a year on anti-aging products. And by the way, I'm going to show you an anti-aging experience here, which I call the Inga experiment. Because you're going to get to see, how was it last night to watch Inga's face? How many people were here? And you saw Inga's face get bigger, and then you saw it get smaller? Well, we're going to try something with each other where your face is going to get younger, and then it's going to get older. We're going to try that in a minute. So anyhow, we know that 120 million people are going to be over 65. The world is changing. There's a huge age wave. We're not going to talk today about how that affects housing, healthcare, and all. There are some hardcore issues on the horizon that we're all going to need to face into. How technology is going to play a role. My friend Dan Burris and I talk a lot about that. So, finding my joy again in a new season of life. This is Lisette's and my new home. We hope you come to San Diego. We're right on the ocean now, overlooking Torrey Pines Beach in La Jolla. And this is finding and being with my now family. This was taken yesterday at the Women's March in Honolulu. And that's all of us. That's my new family. And this was finding joy again. That's what we do. So what is age beyond years? Age is social status, losing ground. Mike Friedman was a dear friend and mentor of mine. He wrote Type A Behavior. Mike Friedman used to talk about something that I think plays out so powerfully in our lives called status insecurity. Status insecurity. My God, we know somebody in this country who has it, the most pathologically intense case of it in history. Okay, so age is one of the primary ways we judge and make attributions about each other. When I wrote Secrets Men Keep, I was studying gender attribution, the experience we have when we walk into a room, girl, boy, 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 boy. We go boy, girl, and then we see somebody, and we go, Pat? We don't know. And the confusion of seeing somebody where we can't attribute gender. Well, the new frontier, folks, is for us to wake up. It's a new awakening. And the awakening is to become conscious of how we internalize our age, how we talk to ourselves about how old we are, how we feel about, how we cherish ourselves or criticize ourselves, and to also not only become aware of how we do it, but how we do it with other people, how we put other people in boxes. It's like old guy, young guy, middle, and what value system we tie to that. Age attribution, becoming conscious of how we do that, is one of the most liberating things we can do at this time in our lives. So how we make these things, how we put people in a box, and age often excludes us. Bobby talked about belonging. How do we deal with people who get older in TLC? Did you notice we're all getting a little older? You come in, you haven't been here in a year, and you look at somebody and you go, you look a little older than you did last year, or I haven't seen you in 2 years. And how do we feel about that? Or we get these newbies coming in, these younger people, and occasionally somebody's daughter and son. My God, how are we doing with that? How are we doing with bridging the blessing? It's an exercise we won't have the time to do that I often do in companies. It has to do with bringing together and saying, a younger person, a millennial saying to a baby boomer in the same company, here's the gift that it would be an honor to be able to give to you as somebody who's a few generations ahead of me. And here's the gift I would give to you as somebody who's a few generations behind me. Seeing what gifts we would give, how we would connect to one another, because there's tremendous disruption. It's like, that's not the way we do it around here. That's not the way we've done it here. Or, I can't believe you guys don't understand that technology. You're doing it in an ancient, archaic way. You're going about this. So how do we blend the best of what we know? And, of course, we experience age angst and dread about aging out. The question I started to raise that I would invite us to have an open space next time we meet is, what does it mean to age out of TLC? What do we feel? Could we create a safe enough space to talk about how age is affecting our experience of being here? How included we feel, how valued we feel, how safe it is to talk about being younger or being older or being somewhere in the middle and feeling older or feeling younger. But those are important conversations for us to have. And, of course, Maya always has something extraordinary to say, but coming out of it, what you can rise from, and there's no more important words in our world these days than rise up. So, life's 4 seasons, no matter where you are, and we're going to segue into an exercise. You may identify yourself in the winter, in the spring, summer, fall, or you may identify yourself as, because there is a season called, hey, I am really winding things down. How many of us in this room work with people at end-of-life issues or have been there intimately at the end of life? Okay? Or experiencing an episode in your own life. So these are incredibly important things. Here's the first exercise. I want you to I have something, the first chapter of the book, it's called a self-audit, a courageous aging self-audit. Instead of doing the self-audit, I'm just going to take one question from the self-audit. I want you to look at the person next to you, find a person next to you right now, and I want you to simply look at them. If it's somebody you know the answer to this question, then go to somebody else. And I want you to simply ask them, how old are you? So try that. Let's just try that one simple question. How old are you? Now that you know how old the other person is, take a turn describing what was it like to tell the other person your age. Were you scared of being judged? Was there a moment of hesitation or trepidation? Was there a tinge of arrogance? Well, I'm bragging, or a calm acceptance about your age. Start there. Okay, we're going to start shifting into the second question with your partner. What weighs most heavily on your heart as you get older? Take turns. What weighs most heavily on your heart as you get older? What's weighing on your heart? Switch if you have not already switched to the other person. What is weighing most heavily on your heart? And if you have already switched, go to the next question. What makes your heart sing at this time in your life? What makes my heart sing at this time in my life? Okay, let's finally move to the last question. What do you imagine it would take for your heart to be at peace at the end of life? What would it take for your heart to be at peace at the end of your days? Start winding down your conversation with your partner. Feel free to wish them a heart that sings. Share wishes with them for a heart that sings. In whatever way feels real to you. My prayer for you is Okay, let's slowly come back to being one group. Thank you for once again opening the heart of this room. What we have, we're going to wind down in the next 10 minutes. And what we have in that wind down is, had we had a little bit more time, an hour and a half, these are some of the things when we think about how do I process what is courageous aging. Here is some of the process work that happens in the courageous aging workshops that I do and programs. But talking about self-limiting attitudes that we catch ourselves in, inhibitions, judgments, biases that we're realizing, how they hold us back, what life might be like if we were able to let go of a big part of them, what would help us clear the air and to live forward with newfound emotional freedom. One of the gifts of getting older is, oh my God, I have all this experience. I don't give a shit the way I used to give a shit. I'm not the pleaser I was. Okay? You know, your approval isn't that as important as it once was. Your love is what matters. You know, let's put love in the room. Let's stop performing for each other. Let there be the kind of authenticity that has been here this week. You know, are we creating, the question about TLC is, are we creating greater safety and emotional freedom? You know, yes or no? Because if we are, then we're in the right place. You know, we change the culture because if we change the culture here and we make it safe to talk about what we're going through as we get older, the freedoms, the joys, you know, all the parts, all the struggles, the challenges, the opportunities, the ease we might be experiencing, some of the challenges as we grieve our younger self and look to cherish and hold that beautiful older version of us. You know, these are all important conversations, but if we change the culture here, we go back out into the world and we multiply it everywhere else. And suddenly, you know, in parts of the world, when you turn 60, in India, you turn 60, you're just waking up. It's all just starting. There's an awakening, a beautiful awakening. You're not sent out to pasture. You're not on the back nine of life. You're just waking up if you've been blessed to have that many days. So let's be more that way. These are some of the exercises. As you can see, I thought the Inga experiment, I just want you to try this quickly. The Inga experiment is, and thanks to our program last night, is simply looking into the face of the person next to you. Okay? And just try that for a second. I'm just going to be real quick. Look into the face of the person next to you and think, I want one of you to think of what's weighing most heavily on your heart. Show that face of the part of you that is holding the heaviness of what you said before was weighing most heavily on your heart. And now switch to the face of what's making your heart sing. And show that face to the other person. Okay? Did they get younger or older? Okay, that's the Inga experiment. It's called What Makes Our Heart Sing Keeps Us Forever Young. Yes? Okay. Yeah, try it the other way too. Yeah, absolutely. And these are just aging consciously exercises. And I'll share these with you guys. This is critical. I wrote an article which went viral a couple of weeks ago called Facing Down the Biggest Fear. I'll send them to you, Claire. Facing Down the Biggest Fear. And it got picked up by the National Hospice magazine or something. It's getting picked up, but it's what do we free up when we deal with directly? And then, of course, creating a safety in the room here. This is another open space, Robbie, to talk about this. What do we honestly feel in here about life after death? What do we think about that? Can we create the safety in the room to process that? What allows our hearts to breathe when it comes to passing? The love that never dies, our soul's journey. What wisdom would we share with one another about what's beyond? Okay? A couple of affirmations just to send you out on some real high notes. I release all feelings of embarrassment, fear, shame, as well as the need to ever apologize, explain, or defend myself when I'm asked, how old are you? Is that a good one? Okay. Let's try another one. From this day forward, I greet my older self with love, acceptance, compassion, support, and understanding. I don't sit there going, what's that? Affirmation number 3, I summon the courage I need to move forward, let go of old fears, hurts, regrets, expectations. That story I tell myself. I screwed up, I didn't take advantage, what I could have done with my last book, it's all of that. Self-limiting ideas about the age that keep me from harvesting the joy, the peace, the curiosity and love in each day of life. And then I do whatever's necessary to put my house in order, to simplify and unclutter my life and pay the good forward. Uncluttering is important. I don't want to leave my daughter with a mess. All right? You just went through that. So let's take the time to put our stuff in order. You don't buy life insurance because you want to die. You buy it to live in peace. That if something happens, everything has been taken care of. The people who love you will be going through enough in their grieving. Okay? Affirmation 6. I make each moment, hour, day, month, year, TLC gathering, and season of my life prime. I am in the prime of my life right now. This is the prime of my life right now, right here. All right? Is that okay? And lastly, I release all judgments I may have about people who are older or younger than myself and get to know them for who, not how old they are. Okay, so the affirmation of our true value and worth is what's important here. So courageous aging, it's taking inventory, looking, as we heard in the beginning of the week, observing, reflecting, processing, clearing the path forward, reimagining the future, formulating a new vision and plan, which I invite you to do. And in the back of the Courageous Aging book, there's actually a way to do that. And there's also a personal journal that comes with that. Putting your house in order, making peace, and lastly, leaving that legacy of love. Is there anything else you want to leave? Is there anything that you need to clean up and set straight or apologize or make amends to leave that legacy of love and to find peace in our lives, thinking that we're going to be just living forever. We're going to live long and well. Putting those things together, this is what courageous aging is. We've said that. And my hope and prayer for you is to cultivate a life-affirming health, happiness, and love practices as you and we get older. That the kindness, self-compassion, forgiveness, permission, safety, and peace we're learning to give ourselves spreads like a warm breeze across our entire TLC family, out to our nation, and out to the world. And that we find peace from putting our house in order now so we can get out there, kick up a lot of dust, pay the good in our lives forward, and find peace and joy in the years to come. Mahalo. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. That was beautiful. All right.